Hello and welcome back to our Vectorworks 2026 drafting tutorials. For this project, we're going to be drafting a three-dimensional lamp post. We've worked with some 3D things a little bit so far, but this is just going to explore some more of the 3D tools. There is a file on Nexus that is essentially what the printout PDF would look like when you're completely done with this project for you to reference. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start by creating a new file in Vectorworks. It's just going to be a blank document. I don't need it to be a template in this case. And as always, I'm going to come up and change my units to feet and inches, rounding fractional, and the precision 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And I'm going to come over to my attributes palette and change my line thickness to 7. And from there, I'm ready to start. So as you can see from the example provided, the base of this lamppost is a hexagon that's 1 foot 6 inches across. So for that, I'm going to use my regular polygon tool. From here, I am in inscribed mode. And I want the number of sides to be 6 because I want it to be a hexagon. So because I want it to be 18 inches across and I'm working essentially from the center out on the radius, I'm going to hit Tab and make that 9 inches. And then I'll click to complete that. And there is my hexagon. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and just drag the duplication off to the side. I'll use that a little bit later. And then I'll select my original hexagon again, and I'm going to extrude it 4 inches. From there, I'm going to take my 3D flyover tool and just do this to verify that extrusion. Sure enough, there I've got my extruded hexagon. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and just go back into a top plan view. Next, I want to round the top edges of my hexagon so that is a little bit more smooth. And for that, we're going to use the Fillet Edge tool, which is in the 3D tool set. So previously, we've been in the building shell. We're going to click on the 3D tool set next to it. And this is the Fillet Edge tool. It looks like a little cube with a corner cut off of it. So I'm going to select that. And I'm going to select each of these edges. I'm just going to hold Shift and click and select all 6 of them. I want to set my constant radius for 1/4 of an inch in this case. So once that's all set, I'm going to click on this green check mark. And then again, if I go to my 3D flyover and deselect it, we can see that I now have a rounded edge of my hexagon. For now, I'm just going to go back into a top plan view. Next, I'm going to draw a circle with either a 1 foot diameter or a 6 inch radius. So I'll activate my circle tool. And in my case, I'm set in radius mode. That's just fine. So I'll tab in and give it a 6 inch radius. There we go. Click to complete that. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this circle and drag that duplication onto the 2D hexagon that I drew earlier. Again, I'll use those a little bit later on. And then I'm going to come back and select my original circle again, and I'm going to extrude it 1 inch. From here, I'm going to go to a front view. And there's my circle. And I want to use the Fillet Edge tool again, both on the top and bottom edge of my circle. So I'll select my Fillet Edge tool. I'm going to keep my constant radius at 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to select the top edge and the bottom edge, and then click the green check. And now my circle has rounded edges. From there, I'm going to go back to a top plan view. And I'm going to drag this circle into the center of my extruded hexagon. And then I'll go back to a front view and see that it's basically sitting in the middle of it, which is definitely not where I want it. So I'm just going to go ahead and move it. I'm going to move it 4 inches on the X offset, or sorry, excuse me, on the Y offset. And it's going to set it right on top of that hexagon. I need one more of those, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that circle, and I'm going to move that duplication up 1 inch. Oh, I did that wrong. That was on the x-axis, so I'm going to move it 0 on x, 1 on the y. There we go. Now I have 2 circles sitting on top of my hexagon. And for now, again, I'm just going to go back into a top plan view. Continuing to work my way up the lamppost, I'm going to go ahead and draw another circle with a 9-inch diameter. So I'll activate my circle tool, and this time I'm going to go into diameter mode, and it wants to be a diameter of 9 inches. So I'll start my circle, tab in, tell it 9 inches, and click to complete that. There we go. And then I'm going to offset this inside of it. So I'm going to go to my offset tool in my basic tool palette, or my basic tool set. And I want to set my distance to 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to click inside this circle so that I'm offsetting to the inside. And it's going to draw me a second circle right there. I'm going to switch back to my selection tool and select both of those circles. And then I'm going to come up to Modify and Clip Surface. It's going to select the inner surface, which is the one I want to get rid of, and I'll just hit Delete. And now it leaves me with a ring, which is exactly what I'm looking for. From here, I'm going to activate my rectangle tool. There's going to be a series of rectangles all around this that are going to get extruded later on. So I'll activate my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a 1 inch by 1 inch rectangle, and I'm going to grab the bottom center smart point of that rectangle and drag it to the top center smart point of my outer circle. There we go. While I still have that selected, I'm going to go ahead and mirror that rectangle horizontally across my ring, so I've got one at the bottom. And then I'm going to select both of those rectangles and duplicate them. And then I want to rotate those duplications. So I'm going to come to Modify and Rotate, and then Rotate again. And I want them to rotate on a 30-degree angle. Okay, and there's my new rectangles. I'm going to repeat this process 4 more times so that the rectangles surround the entirety of this ring. So again, I'm going to duplicate those, rotate 30 degrees, those, and one more time. Great. So now I've got all of my rectangles duplicated. So we're going to have 12 total of those. From here, I'm actually going to drag a selection marquee around all of these objects, and I'm going to duplicate it like I did before, and I'm going to grab that duplication and just kind of move it off to the side over here. Again, I'll deal with that later on. And then I'm going to draw another selection marquee around my original part to select it, and then I'm going to go ahead and extrude it by 2 feet 3 inches. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and using my center smart point, I'm going to click and grab this extrusion and drag it on top to the center smart point of the rest of my lamppost. And then from there, I'll go into a front view, and you can see that new extrusion, but again, it's set down too low, so we need to move that a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and move it, and we're going to move it 6 inches on the Y offset. So it's going to set on top of that base that we constructed so far. From here, I want one of these circles to sit on top of this new extrusion, so I'm going to go ahead and just select that bottom one and duplicate it. And I'm going to move that duplication up 2 feet 4 inches. And then when I zoom out, you can see that it's sitting on top. If I use my 3D flyover, we start to see that lamppost base kind of taking shape. For now, I'm going to go ahead and return to a top plan view. And I'm going to just draw a selection marquee around this ring and my rectangles there. And I'm going to go ahead and group those together so they just all act as one unit. And then I'll take that center smart point and drag it to the center of the 2D version that I have going on over here. Continuing to work my way up the lamppost, I'm going to draw another circle. So I'm going to activate my circle tool. And this one I want to have an 8-inch diameter. So I'm going to start that, tab in, I'm in diameter mode, so I'm good to go. 8 inches, and click to complete. There's my 8-inch circle. And like the other ones, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that and just drag that duplication out of the way for a second. And then I'll select the original circle that I drew. And I'm going to go ahead and extrude this, and I want to extrude it by 1/2 inch. From there, I'm going to go ahead and go into a front view, and here's my new extruded circle. And I'm going to use the fillet edge tool again to round both the top and bottom edges of this. So I'll select my fillet edge tool. I'm going to change my constant radius to 1/8 of an inch, and select both the top edge and the bottom edge of that circle, and click my check mark. From here, I'm going to go back to a top plan view, and with my selection tool, I'm going to drag the center of this new extrusion on top of the other ones that are making up my lamppost. Once I have that centered, I'll go back to a front view, and here is my new circle extrusion that's much lower than I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and move it on the Y offset, and I'm going to move it 2 feet 10 inches. Then when I pan up, here's my new circle sitting up on top of that pillar. I need 3 more of those, so I'm going to duplicate that and then move it 1/2 inch, and I'll do that 2 more times until I have 4 of those circles stacked up on top of each other. I'm going to deselect that last extrusion and return to a top plan view. Next, I'm going to draw another circle. So again, I'll activate my circle tool, and this time it's going to have a diameter of 7 inches. Once I've set that, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it, and I'm going to just drag that duplication into the middle of that 8-inch diameter circle that I set off to the side earlier. And then I'm going to go ahead and click that initial 7-inch circle, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude it 2 inches. From there, I'm going to go back to a front view. There it is. And again, I want to soften those edges, so I'm going to use that fillet edge tool again, and I'm going to switch my constant radius back to 1/4 inch and select both the top and the bottom edge and click my check mark, and there I've got my filleted edges. From here, I'm going to go back to a top plan view, and using my center smart point, I'm going to drag that on top of my lamppost, and then go back to a front view, and there it is. Again, we need to raise that up, so I'm going to move it, and I'm going to move it 3 feet on the Y-axis, or Y offset, and it's going to set it on top of my other objects. For now, I'm going to deselect that and go back to a top plan view. Next, I'm going to draw yet another circle. This one's going to be 3 inches in diameter, so I'll activate my circle tool and 3 inches. Great, there we go. And we're going to make a similar shape to what we did earlier. So I'm going to take my rectangle tool and create a rectangle that is 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. There we go. And again, using my bottom center smart point, I'm going to drag it to the top center smart point of my circle. And then I'm going to mirror that shape across the circle. And I'll duplicate both of those and modify, rotate, rotate 30 degrees, just like we did before. I'm going to continue working around my outer circle, duplicate again. Great, till I've got all of my rectangular duplications surrounding that circle. From here, I'm going to select my circle, and I'm going to go back to the offset tool. I need to create that ring that we had before, so I'm going to select my offset tool, and I'm going to change the offset to 1/2 inch, and I'm going to offset this to the middle. There it is. Then go back to my selection tool and select both of my circles and modify clip surface. It's going to select that inner circle, and I'll hit delete. And now I've got the ring that I had as before. I'm going to go ahead and draw a selection marquee around all of these objects and duplicate them again. Just drag that duplication off to the side. And then I'm going to go ahead and group it, so Command G, so that's all one group. And I'm going to grab this and drag it right on top of those other circles that I had been working with. I'm going to come back to this original shape that I've been working on, and I'll draw a rectangle marquee or a selection marquee around all of those objects to select them. And I'm going to extrude that 5 feet. And once I've extruded that, I'll grab its center smart point and drag it to the center of my lamppost. And then go back to a front view. There it is. Obviously, I need to raise that up, so I'm going to move it, and I'm going to move it 3 feet 2 inches. And that'll set it up on top of that other object. And now my lamppost is really starting to take some shape. For now, I'm going to go back to a top plan view. Next, I'm going to draw another circle with a 5-inch diameter. And I actually don't need to duplicate this one, but I am going to go ahead and extrude it 1/2 inch. And then I'll go into my front view, and I need to fillet those edges so they're curved. So I'm going to grab my fillet edge tool, and because it's only extruded 1/2 inch, I'm going to change the constant edge to the constant radius to 1/8 of an inch. And I'll select both my top and bottom edges and click my check mark. From there, I'll go back to a top plan view, and I want to center this right on top of the rest of my lamppost, and then go back to a front view, and then obviously I need to raise that up, so I'm going to move that 8 feet 2 inches, and I'll zoom out and pan up, and there's my circle that I've just created. From here, I'll go back to a top plan view, and I'm going to draw another circle that is 4 inches in diameter. Again, I don't need to duplicate this one. And I'm going to go ahead and extrude this circle by 1 inch. And then back to a front view. I want to fillet these edges, so again, my fillet edge tool, changing my constant radius back to 1/4 of an inch. And clicking on the top edge and the bottom edge of my circle and clicking the check. There we go. Going back to a top plan view, and I'll drag the center of this into the center of my lamppost and go back to a front view. And there it is. And I'm going to raise that up 8 feet, 2.5 inches. So there's my newest circle. And I'm actually going to duplicate this one and move it up on top so I've got like a little sandwich. So I'm going to select that circle extrusion and duplicate it and move it. And we're going to move it up 1.5 inches. There we go, so it's sitting on top. From here, I'll go back to a top plan view. From here, I'm going to draw a rectangle. So I will activate my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle that is 6 inches by 6 inches. There we go. And I'm going to extrude it by 1/2 inch. And then with that extrusion, I'm going to grab the center and I'm just going to drag it into the center of my lamppost and switch to a front view. And here's my kind of ghosted extruded rectangle that I need to move. So I'm going to go ahead and move it up 8 feet, 4 inches. Okay. And then when I pan up, there's my rectangle sitting on top of my lamppost. From here, I'm going to deselect that and go back to a top plan drawing or top plan view. And I'm going to go ahead and save my drawing. And next we'll start working on the lamp housing of the lamppost. To start my lamp housing, I'm going to go ahead and draw another 6 inch by 6 inch rectangle. Oops, that's a circle. There we go. 6 inch by 6 inch. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and offset it by 1/2 inch. So I'm going to select my offset tool, verify that I'm in 1/2 inch, and I'm going to click to the inside of it so I make a smaller surface, smaller rectangle. With my selection tool, I'm going to select both of those and say modify and clip surface. I'll delete that center section. And then I'm going to select this sort of ringed rectangle, and I'm going to extrude it 1/2 inch. Great. From here, I'm going to repeat that process, creating a 12 by 12 inch rectangle right on top of this one. So again, I'm going to take my rectangle tool, and I'm going to say I want it 12 by 12. There we go. I'm going to drag that to the center of this rectangle. And from here, again, I'm going to offset that inside by 1/2 inch. And I'll select both of those, modify, clip surface, get rid of that. I'll select this one, and I'm going to extrude it by 1/2 inch as well. With that larger rectangle still selected, I'm going to go to a front view. Here they are kind of right on top of each other, so I'm going to take the larger one and I'm going to move it up 6 inches. Next, I'm going to zoom in on this just so it's a little easier to work on. And I'm going to draw a vertical line from the lower left-hand corner of this lower extruded rectangle. Doesn't matter how long it is, I just need it to come up a little ways. And then I'm going to move that line 1/2 inch on the X offset, 0 on the Y, so I'm just moving it over. And really, I'm just giving myself a reference point of this intersection right here. From here, I'm going to select my polyline tool or my polygon tool, either one. If I select the polygon tool, I need to make sure that I'm in vertex mode. If I select the polyline tool, I need to be in corner vertex mode. And I'm going to start my polyline at the lower left-hand corner of the top extrusion. And so I'm going to click there and tab in and make the first vertex 1/2 inch. I'll click to set that point. And then my next point is going to be the intersection of this line and this extrusion right there. I'll come over to the edge of the bottom extrusion and then back up to the corner of the top one to complete my polygon. Then I'm going to select this line that I made for reference and just delete it. From here, I'm going to have this polygon selected, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude it 1/2 inch. Great. And with that still selected, I'm going to switch to a left view. And we can see that the polygon that I just drew does not intersect my other two, and actually I can't even see my other two at the moment because they are hidden behind the rest of that column. So I'm going to just draw a marquee here and drag these over so I can see them. There we go. So now I need this extrusion to intersect these two. So I'm going to grab the endpoint in the top right corner, and I'm going to drag it over till it intersects the bottom right corner of the top extrusion. From here, I'm going to go ahead and go back to a top plan view, and there's the 2D representation of that extruded polygon I just made. From here, I need to rotate and resize this polygon extrusion a little bit. So with it selected, I'm going to go ahead and grab my rotate tool. And I'm going to grab the left midpoint smart point and click here. And then I'm going to grab the right midpoint smart point. And then I'm going to rotate it till it's even with the corner of the smaller rectangle. There we go. Now I need to resize it so that it extends all the way and connects with those two. So I'm going to double click to enter that extrusion. And I want to make sure that in my modes, I'm on single object interactive scaling mode. This is going to be the easier one to work with and is also going to be a little bit more accurate. So I'm going to grab this handle, this endpoint handle right here, and I'm just going to drag it till it intersects with the inner rectangle or the inner edge of the smaller rectangle, and click to resize that. And then I'll come up to exit extrude since I'm done resizing it. And then I need to rotate it one more time so that it's even with this corner. So I'm going to grab my rotate tool again, and I'm going to come from this midpoint to this midpoint, and then click on the endpoint of the larger rectangle to rotate there. From there, I can go to my 3D flyover and do some rotation, and we can see that my polygon is now at an angle and it's intersecting both the upper and the lower rectangles. For now, I'm going to go back to a top plan view. From here, I need to mirror this extruded polygon so that I've got one in each of the corners. So with it selected, I'm going to go ahead and grab my mirror tool, and I'm going to go from the midpoint of this outer rectangle on the bottom and drag it vertically to create this one. And then I will select both of those and select my mirror tool again, and I'll go from the midpoint on the left-hand edge and mirror it that way. So now I've got all four of those. And now again, if I go to my 3D flyover and I do some rotation, we can see how I've kind of created a little basket shape that's going to be the bottom of my lamp housing. Next, I need to turn the bottom of this lamp housing into one solid object. So to do this, I'm going to come to a front view and just draw a selection marquee around all of those elements. Just makes it a little bit easier for them to be selected. And because I'm dealing with a 3D object here, I'm going to come up to Model and Add Solids. And now, this should be one solid object that can be moved as one individual thing. From here, I'm going to go back to a top plan view, and I'm going to duplicate this solid, and I'm just going to drag it off to the side near my other duplications to be used later on. Next, I need to move the bottom half of my lamp housing basket up on top of the rest of my lamp post. So I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to grab the top right endpoint smart point of the smaller rectangle, and I'm going to drag it up and zoom in and place it right on the corner of this other rectangle, and that should center it right in the middle of my lamp post. From there, I'm going to switch to a front view, and you can see here's my basket of my lamp post, and obviously we need to move it up. So we're going to go ahead and move, and it's going to be 0 on the X offset, and it's going to be 8 feet 4.5 inches on the Y. And then if I zoom out, you can see that the bottom half of my lamp housing basket is sitting right on top of my lamp post. From here, with it still selected, I want to mirror it, so I have two halves. So I'm going to select my mirror tool, and I'm going to mirror it right across this top edge so that I have two pieces of that. And just to look at it, I'm going to grab my flyover, and so we can kind of see what that's looking like. Looks pretty good. And to finish that off, I'm going to give it a little top cap, so I'm going to come back to a top plan view, and I'm going to draw another 6 by 6 inch rectangle, and I'm going to extrude that 1 inch. I'm going to drag that into the center of my lamp post and go back to a front view. And I'm going to move this rectangle up 9 feet 5.5 inches. Should put it on the top of my lamp housing. Let's zoom out and see. Yep, there it is. There's the top little cap section of my lamp. For now, I'm going to go back to a top plan view, and next we'll work on the socket for the light bulb. Next, I'm going to work on the light bulb socket for my lamp post. So I'm going to zoom out here just a little bit, and I'm going to draw a new circle that is 2 inches in diameter. There we go. And I'm going to extrude it by 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And then I'm going to draw another circle with 1 1/4 inch diameter. And I'm going to extrude it 1 inch. From here, we're going to use a new tool in the 3D modeling tool set. It's going to be this one over here. It is the Shell Solid tool. And basically what it's going to do is kind of hollow out the cylindrical extrusion that I just made. So just for point of reference, if we go to our flyover, right, this is a solid cylinder that I've got. Oops. And I want to essentially hollow part of this out. So going back to a top plan view, I've got that selected. I'm going to select my shell solid tool. I want to change my thickness to 1/8 of an inch if it isn't already. And I'm going to select that circle so it's highlighted and click my check mark. And now it looks like a ring, but if I go into my 3D flyover and rotate it, we can see that that is actually kind of hollowed out now, but still has a little bit of a bottom to it. I'm going to come back to a top plan view, and I'm going to grab the extrusion that I just hollowed out and put it on top of the larger one. So that's centered up. From there, I'm going to go to a front view, and obviously I need to lift this up the thickness of its base. So we're just going to move that 1/8 of an inch on the Y offset. There we go. And now I'm going to select both of those items and turn it into one solid thing. So again, because I'm dealing with a 3-dimensional object, I'm going to say Model, Add Solids. And now that is one entire object in and of itself. From here, I need to position this socket on top of my lamppost. So I'm going to go back to a top plan view. And I'm going to grab the center of the socket I just created and put it right in the center of my lamppost. And then go back to a front view where obviously I need to move it up. And I'm going to move this socket up 8 feet 5 inches. And then when I pan up here, we can see that my socket is basically at the bottom of the basket that I have created as my lamp housing. Next, I'm going to put a light bulb into my socket, or what we would call an A-lamp. So I'm going to open up my resource manager here. I've already got one set because I've done this once already, but in the search field, if you just search for A-lamp, it'll give you a whole bunch of different options. You want lighting A-19 shell. So you're just going to double click on that one and it'll bring it into the drawing. You can see that the insertion point is on the bottom in the middle of the lamp. So we're going to zoom in here and I'm going to insert it basically right on the bottom center of that top cylinder making up the socket. So I'm going to click twice to insert my lamp. There we go. And then I need to move it in 3-dimensional space properly. So I'm going to go back to a top plan view. And here's my lamp. We can see that it's obviously not centered. So I'm just going to grab the center of it and drag it up to the center of that socket. I'll zoom out a little bit and go back to my flyover. And now we can see that I have a light bulb inserted into my lamppost. Next, I'm going to work on creating the finial that sits up on top of the lamppost. So for that, I'm going to go to a front view. And to draw this, I'm going to use my polyline tool. And I'm going to put it in Bezier vertex mode. It's the second one over. This is a way of drawing some kind of unique curves. So I'm going to select that. And I'm going to make my starting point the top midpoint of my lamppost. I'll click to start that and kind of start dragging out the line. And I want the first section to be 3 inches long at a 45-degree angle. So it's going to lock that in for me. I'm going to click on the edge of this circle and bring it back towards center, and you can see how it starts to draw that line. So I'm going to hit tab again, and I want this section to be 4 inches at a 120-degree angle. So it's going to show me where that is. I'll click on that point, and I'll keep moving up and out. I want the next section to be 2 inches at a 45-degree angle. So it's going to come out to the side here. I'll click there. And then I'm going to do one more that's going to be 3 inches at 120 degrees. And it's going to give me that line right there. At this point, I'm going to actually double click on the outside of this circle, and it's basically going to complete that polyline for me. Now that's still just a 2-dimensional shape, so now I need to turn it into something 3D, and for that we're going to use the sweep tool, which essentially creates something kind of cylindrical. So I've got my polyline selected. I'm going to go up to Model, because I'm dealing with a 3D object, and select Sweep. This little splash screen is going to come up. It's perfectly fine. We're going to keep these defaults for this project. So I'm going to say OK. And now it has created a 3-dimensional version of that polyline that I just created. With that still selected, I'm going to go back to a top plan view, and as I suspected, it's not anywhere near where it needs to be relative to the lamppost in 3-dimensional space. So I'm just going to grab the center of it and drag it up and put it right on the center of my lamppost. And from there, I'll go back to a front view, and we can see that it's still sitting right on top. But if I do my flyover, now we know that it's 3-dimensionally in the correct location. Next, I'm going to change the render texture on the lamppost, which is much the same that we've done with some of the 3D theater drawing that we've done. So I'm going to start by going into a front view, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to draw a selection marquee around the entire lamppost. And then I'm going to zoom back in and hold Shift and deselect both the light bulb and the socket. So I'll still have everything else selected. From there, I'm going to go to my Object Info palette in the Render tab, and I'm going to click by class, and I'm going to search for asphalt. Apparently I've spelled it wrong. There we go. And I've got my various options here, and I'm going to be looking for Asphalt Black RT, which is this one right here. So I'm just going to double click that, and we can see that our lamppost has now turned black with everything except the socket and the light bulb. Next, I'm going to work on creating some viewports to set up a printable drawing. So from here, I'm going to go back to a front view and just deselect everything. And I'm going to draw a rectangle around the entirety of my lamppost, just like we've done before. And in my attributes palette, I'm going to change both the pen and the fill to none, so I have a transparent rectangle around my lamppost. And I'm going to come up and click on View and create Viewport. I definitely want this to be the viewport's crop, so I'm going to say yes. And then I get this creation name. So our viewport is going to be front view will be the name. In terms of create on layer, I'm going to create a new sheet layer for this. The sheet number is going to be 1, and the sheet title is going to be lamppost, and I'll click OK. I'm going to deselect Use Drawing Label, and I'm going to change my scale to 1/2 inch. And then over here on the right-hand side under background render, I'm going to change it from shaded to wireframe. And I'll click OK. And it's going to create a viewport for me. Now this is obviously on a portrait 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, which I need to change. So I'm going to go to File, Page Setup, just like we've done before. And I want the ASME A, and I'll click OK. And I'm just going to move my lamp post kind of right there. From here, I'm going to go ahead and add some dimensions to the front view of my lamppost. So I'm going to double click on that viewport, and I'm going to be editing the annotations. That's correct. And I'll just zoom in here, and I'm going to start on the bottom. So I'll activate my constrained dimension tool and click on either side of the base. And as I'm drawing down, I'm going to tab and tell it 9 inches to place that dimension line. There we go. Then I'm going to go from the bottom corner to the top edge. Remember, this is filleted, so there's multiple places that it can grab a dimension from, but we want the very top. So I'm going to select that and come out here to the right. Again, I'm going to hit tab and tell it 9 inches to set that dimension. From here, I'm going to go to the bottom where these rings meet the base, and I'll click there. And I'm going to go clear up to, let's go up to the top of this next section. So I'll click there and bring that out even with this dimension line. So we're at 2'6". Then I'm going to select here where these smaller rings intersect that base. And I'm going to draw a dimension line that tells me all the way up to where the base of my lamp housing is. So I'm going to click here. That's going to give us 5'6½", I believe. Yep, there we go. And then we'll do one that's the overall height of the lamp housing itself, which is 1'2". And then we'll just do an overall dimension of the entire lamp post. So I'm going to go from the bottom of the base clear up to the top of the finial, and I'm going to bring that out here. Let's bring it out 3 feet. There we go. So 10'4 1/8". Then I need to do the width of my lamp housing here. So I'm going to go right where the horizontal rectangles intersect each other, the 2 sections that we mirrored across, and click on each one of those, and let's bring that up 1'9". Great, so that's 1 foot. And then just so that we know, we're going to go from, we're going to measure just the bottom section of that lamp housing. So we'll click there, and again, we'll come out 9 inches for a total of 6.5 inches. And there we go. I've dimensioned out my front view of my lamppost. From here, I'm just going to click Exit Viewport Annotation and move on to the next viewport. Next, I'm going to create a viewport and some dimensions for my lamp cage. So in my layer drop-down menu, I'm going to go back to Design Layer 1, and this time I want to be in a top plan view. And we'll zoom in to where my lamp cage is, and I'm just going to grab mine and move it out of the way because it's kind of close to some of these other things. And again, I'm just going to draw a rectangle around it and change the pen and the fill on those to none. So I have a transparent rectangle, and view, create viewport. Yes, I want it to be the crop. And we're going to call this lamp cage. It's going to be on the same sheet layer, so that's already selected. It's going to be drawing number 2. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to change my scale to 1/2 inch. And I'm going to leave my background render as wireframe, so I'm going to click OK. So here's my lamp cage. I'm going to move it up so that the center of it is roughly even with the center of the lamp cage itself. And I'll double click to enter into that. Yes, I want to do with the annotations. And I'll activate my constrained dimension tool. And I'm going to dimension this larger rectangle, which we know is 1 foot. I'll hit tab and move that down 9 inches. And we'll do the other side angle dimension of that cage as well. Again, moving it out 9 inches. And then for the other two, we'll do the dimensions of the smaller rectangle, which were 6 inches. So I'll do those 2 points. I'm going to drag it out here. Well, we can go 9 inches with that as well. And these 2 points here coming out 9 inches as well. There we go. There's all the dimensions that I need for my lamp cage. So I'm going to exit out of this viewport. Next, I'm going to work on a viewport for my base. So I'm going to go back to my design layer in a top plan view, and I'm going to zoom in here on my base section. Before I do that, I actually want to turn part of this black. So I'm actually going to select the group that is the circles and squares that looks kind of like a gear. And once I have that selected, I'm going to come over to my attributes palette to fill and click on the white color bar and change it to black. And there we go. From here, like the other ones, I'm going to draw a rectangle around that base and change its pen and fill to none. Again, so I have a transparent rectangle that is the crop area of my viewport. And we'll come up and say view, create viewport. Yes. And this viewport's name wants to be base. It's going to be drawing number 3 in the lamppost, which is perfectly fine. We're going to change the scale to 1/2 inch and keep the background rendered in wireframe. I'll click OK. And there it's put my base into my drawing. I'm going to go ahead and grab it, and I'm going to center it on the lamp cage I did before, and then I'm going to bring it down and put it, let's say about halfway up the base in that drawing. That looks like a pretty good spot for it, representing that this would be a plan view section of this base portion. From here, I'm going to double click to enter that viewport and create some annotations. So I'm going to activate my constrained dimension tool. And I'm going to go from kind of this little cog to this little cog, which is 11 inches. And let's come down, say, a foot. That'll be fine. And I'm going to do the same thing going the other direction, coming out this way. A foot, that's not going to be long enough. Let's say 1'3". There we go. So I've got those dimensions, and then I need the kind of outer dimension of the circle. So I'm going to click the circle and the circle for a 1 foot dimension, and let's come up 1 foot. Great. And I'm going to do the same thing, top center of the circle to bottom center of the circle, and I'm going to come out a foot. Now we have those dimensions. I don't need to dimension this portion of the base because I've already done it in my front view over here, so that's easy enough to reference. So from there, I'm going to exit the viewport, and next I can work on the post column. Next, I'm going to do a viewport for the column portion of my lamppost. So I'm going to come back to my design layer, and I'm going to zoom in here on this section of it. And again, I need to change this little cog section to black. So I'm just going to select the whole group and select that white color bar and change it black. There we go. And I'm going to repeat that same process we've done before. So drawing a rectangle around that piece, changing its pen and fill, and then back up to view, create viewport, and this is going to be the column. The layer is going to be lamppost. It's number 4. That's just fine. And we're going to say our scale will be 1/4 inch, and we're going to leave it in wireframe. I'll click OK. And there's my new viewport. And once again, I'm just going to take it and kind of center it on the lamp cage and drag it down so it's about at the midpoint, about halfway down the lamp post there, to represent that this is a cross section of my lamp post over here. I'm going to double click that to be able to annotate it. And with my constrained dimension tool, I'll do the little cog section, which is 4 inches. So we'll move that out 9 inches. And I'll do the same thing going the other direction. Again, moving it out 9 inches. That's fine. And then I'm going to measure the outside diameter of this ring, which is 8 inches. And the outside diameter of this one, which is also 8 inches. Great. Those are the dimensions and annotations I need for the column section. So I'm going to exit out of that viewport annotation. And next I'll put together a more rendered view of the lamppost so we can reference what it's going to look like on the drawing when it's finished. To create the rendered view, I'm going to go back to my design layer, and I'm going to be in a front view. So I want the entirety of the lamppost, so I'm going to go ahead and create another viewport. I'm just going to draw that rectangle around that whole thing. Great. Again, pen and fill to none, and we will create a new viewport. And this viewport name is going to be rendering. Okay, it's going to be drawing number 5. That's fine. I'm going to change its scale to 1/2 inch again. And this time I want to change the background render to shaded. And instead of front, actually we'll just leave it at front for now. We'll do this a different way. I'm going to click OK. And there's my rendering. I'm going to go ahead and just grab it and move it to kind of this right third of the page. And then in my object info palette on the shape tab, here I'm going to change the view. So about halfway down, there's a view section with a drop-down menu, and we're going to do left isometric. You can see it changed the view of the lamppost, but now not the entire lamppost is inside the viewport. So I'm going to double click on it, and instead of annotations, I'm going to choose crop. And I'll click OK. And from here, I can grab these handles and change what's visible inside the crop of my viewport. I'm going to click Exit Crop, and then Object Info, and Update. And now it's updated the entire rendering of my lamppost. I'm going to just grab it and move it up more in line with the rest of my drawing. There we go. and we have an isometric view of what our lamppost is going to look like. The last thing I need to do for this project is to put a border and title block on my drawing and then export it so it can be printed. So like we've done before, I'm going to come up to my resource manager and go to my title blocks file. If your title blocks file is not open, go ahead and open it so you can access those. And I'm going to double click on my ASME border title block file to activate it. And I'm going to place it right in the center of the page. From here, with it selected, I'm going to come up to Object Info and go to the Data tab, and it's giving me the data fields that I can enter and update. So the drawing name is going to be Lamppost, drawn by, I'm just going to put my initials for now. The scale is 1/2 inch equals 1 foot 0 inches. And today's date is May 5th, 2026. Now when I come out of my Object Info palette, we can see that all of that information has been populated. I'm going to fit to page just to zoom in on it and go ahead and save my drawing. And then from here, I'll export PDF. I'll say export and navigate to where you want to save it. I'm going to save it in Lamppost project. And I'm going to call it Lamppost Travis Richardson. I'll say save. Do I want to replace it? Yes, I've already done this one, so I'm going to replace that file. And it will generate the PDF of the drawing. From here, you can upload your PDF drawing to Nexus, and you're done with the project.